Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you about a case that completely challenges the way we usually think criminal investigations work. Before we begin, I'd really appreciate your support with a like, a subscription, and a comment. Every story I cover on this channel is based on real events. Now let's get into it. Normally, when an adult goes missing for several days, an entire community joins the search, and that person is eventually found in a wooded area. Investigators at the scene can usually determine what happened fairly quickly. But this case was different. The usual process didn't provide answers, and even forensic experts found themselves facing more questions than explanations. To understand just how massive this search was, you have to look at what was happening in Lexington, South Carolina, by the middle of June 2026. On June 15th, law enforcement launched one of the largest coordinated search operations the area had seen. The Lexington Police Department, the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, fire and rescue crews, emergency medical services, the Department of Natural Resources, and South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Investigators all worked together. Drones continuously scanned the thick wooded area along Common Farm Lane, just behind the shopping district, where the Lowe's store and Planet Fitness are located. At the time, Police Chief Terrence Green told reporters that this was not a recovery operation. Instead, he described it as a careful effort to methodically eliminate one possible search area. After hours of work involving dozens of specialists, the result was the same. Not a single meaningful lead. The following day, June 16th, another unusual development unfolded. Rumors spread rapidly across the community, claiming that the missing woman had already been found. The police department was forced to issue an official statement, denying the reports, and publicly apologized for the confusion. Amid that wave of misinformation, investigators received a phone call from a local resident. The caller reported seeing the missing woman near Lakeside Middle School on Old Cherokee Road. What made the tip especially interesting was a major inconsistency. The caller claimed the sighting happened sometime between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. But according to the official timeline, the woman didn't enter the gym until 6:40 p.m. That discrepancy has never been publicly explained by investigators. Even so, that one unusual phone call became the first development that finally moved the stalled investigation forward. On June 17th, at 1:30 p.m., search teams entered a wooded area near 455 Old Cherokee Road. The location was nearly 2 miles from the original search zone. Just over an hour later, at 2:48 p.m., Police Chief Terrence Green and Sheriff Jay Kuhn stepped up to the microphones and made the announcement everyone had been waiting for. The search was officially over. The woman who was found was wearing an olive green zip-up hoodie and black athletic pants, matching the clothing described in the missing person bulletin. Shortly afterward, the Lexington County Coroner's Office officially confirmed her identity. The woman found in the woods was 39-year-old Elena Catherine Moore. It seemed like the case had reached its conclusion. But on June 20th, Elena's body was transported to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston for a full forensic examination. 2 days later, Lexington County Coroner Margaret Fisher released the preliminary findings, and they caught investigators completely off guard. There wasn't a single sign of physical aggression on Elena's body. The medical examiner found no external injuries whatsoever. No bruises, no scrapes, no bleeding beneath the skin, no stab wounds or gunshot injuries, no indication of strangulation or blunt force trauma. From the outside, her body appeared completely untouched. The official cause of death was listed as undetermined. Think about that for a moment. How physically possible is it for someone to disappear without a trace in a busy part of town? be searched for extensively by both air and ground crews, and then be found deceased with virtually no visible injuries. It's a true forensic mystery. Just a few weeks before she was found in those woods, this healthy, physically strong woman had openly told close friends that she feared for her safety. Something or someone caused her heart to stop without leaving a single mark on her skin. To understand how investigators ended up facing that question, we first need to look at what her everyday life was really like. To understand the nature of this unusual case, we have to rewind a bit and take a closer look at Elena's daily reality. To everyone around her, she appeared to be a successful, incredibly energetic woman who was constantly on the go. She balanced 3 different jobs at the same time. She worked as a pharmacy technician at a local CVS pharmacy, regularly bartended at several local establishments, and was also a highly sought-after personal trainer at Wolf's Fitness Center. Every day, she interacted with dozens of people from all walks of life. She motivated clients to become stronger, pushed them to challenge themselves, and always projected confidence and determination. To the outside world, she looked like someone who had everything under control. But behind the closed doors of her home, the picture was very different. She had been in a relationship with Brannon Slice for 13 years. Interestingly, the two didn't officially get married until 2024. Most people see a relationship that lasts that long as a sign of stability and trust. But in this case, those years gradually built a wall of isolation around Elena. There's one detail that stands out to me more than anything else. Here was a financially independent woman working 3 jobs, yet she didn't have free access to her own vehicle. The car was always under Brannon's control. He drove her to her morning shifts, and he picked her up when she finished work each evening. Think about that for a second. A personal trainer strong enough to handle intense workouts every day had been stripped of one of the most basic forms of independence in her everyday life: the freedom to come and go on her own. Her entire routine was tied to her husband's schedule. The first attempts to break out of that suffocating cycle began long before the events of May. Back in 2017, when Elena and Brannon had been together for about 5 years, she was already making serious plans to leave. A close family friend, Aston Jeffcoat, later preserved screenshots of their private Facebook Messenger conversations from that time. In those messages, Elena spoke openly about her determination to end the relationship for good. She was actively searching for a roommate so she could rent an apartment and move out. But the move never happened. Somehow, the cycle pulled her back in. As another close friend, Lauren Beasley, later explained to investigators and reporters, this wasn't just an isolated argument or a rough patch. It had become a destructive pattern that repeated itself for years. The relationship followed the same cycle over and over again. Tension would build. Elena would reach a point where she desperately wanted to leave. Then came what looked like reconciliation, followed by the illusion that everything was finally getting better. But before long, the control returned, stronger than before. It became an exhausting psychological trap, one that's incredibly difficult to escape alone. The first major warning sign, although almost nobody around her recognized it at the time, appeared about a month before she disappeared. Here was someone whose entire life revolved around people. She worked in 3 highly social professions, stayed constantly connected, and communicated with others every single day. Then, almost overnight, she completely disappeared from social media. She didn't simply post less often. She went completely silent online. For someone who had always lived such an open and active life, that was completely out of character. What always strikes me is how easy it is to overlook the moment when someone we know suddenly goes quiet. Most of us assume they're just tired or taking a break from social media. But Elena's silence in May wasn't an ordinary digital detox. It was the response of someone who had reached a dead end, someone carrying years of emotional pressure that had finally reached a breaking point. That breaking point came on May 31st. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary brunch at a local restaurant. A group of friends gathered around the table, including Sandra Campbell, who had known Elena for more than 10 years. Forget the image of the strong, confident motivator everyone was used to seeing at the gym. That day, the people around her witnessed behavior that was completely out of character. Elena couldn't physically relax. While everyone else was talking and laughing, she kept jumping up from the table. She repeatedly walked toward the entrance, stared through the windows, scanned the dining room, and watched every person who came through the door. Her body language and constant vigilance suggested someone who believed a threat could appear at any moment and was desperately trying to stay aware of everything happening around her. Sandra noticed how anxious Elena was, but she chose not to bring it up in front of everyone. A crowded restaurant wasn't the place for a conversation like that. The moment when everything changed came as they were leaving. As they said goodbye, Elena tightly grabbed Sandra's hand, led her away from the crowd, and lowered her voice. She wasn't joking. She wasn't exaggerating. She looked directly at Sandra and said, "I'm afraid for my life. This situation is out of control, and you don't even know half of what's really going on." The two agreed they would talk later, somewhere private, where Elena could explain everything. That conversation never happened. On June 4th, Sandra missed a phone call from Elena, and that same day, the entire case took a dramatic turn, leaving behind a disturbing digital trail. I carefully reviewed the doorbell camera footage that investigators collected piece by piece from that Thursday, and what struck me most was the sequence of Elena's actions. The first documented incident took place outside the home of John Moore, about half a mile from Wolf's Fitness Center. The camera captured Elena walking onto the front porch and picking up a food delivery that had been left there. John noticed what was happening and opened the front door. Without saying a word, and without showing any aggression, Elena handed the order back to him. Then she did something that made no sense. She tried to follow him into his house. Moore later told investigators that she appeared completely disoriented and seemed unaware of where she was. About an hour later, another security camera captured her on a nearby street. A local resident, Sarah Burleson, stepped outside and found a stranger carefully going through packages that had been delivered to her front porch. Naturally, she asked, "What are you doing on my porch?" Elena's response was unsettling. "Honestly, I have no idea." During that same time period, Police Inspector Missy Silcox confirmed there was another surveillance recording. This time, cameras outside a Kohl's store captured the same distant, unfocused stare and the same seemingly aimless, disorganized movements. This is where the case takes a sharp turn, because now we're faced with two very different versions of what may have happened. Information from anonymous sources began making its way into the media. According to those reports, after Elena was seen wandering through several neighborhoods, law enforcement supposedly took her to Three Rivers Behavioral Health for a psychiatric evaluation. Many news outlets immediately focused on that possibility, suggesting her behavior could simply be explained by a sudden mental health crisis. But Sandra Campbell strongly and publicly rejected that narrative. She said there were no secrets between them. According to Sandra, the most Elena had ever struggled with was ordinary anxiety, not severe psychiatric episodes that would require hospitalization. When I compare those two completely different accounts, here's what stands out to me. It's easy to label someone as unstable after seeing them take a stranger's pizza from the front porch. But once you remember the fear Elena showed during that brunch, the entire picture starts to look very different. What we're seeing isn't just unusual behavior. We're watching the gradual collapse of someone's ability to cope after living under relentless pressure for years. What looked like irrational behavior to random witnesses may actually have been the visible result of overwhelming emotional stress that had finally pushed her beyond her limits. By that point, her perception of reality already seemed to be slipping. Now let's move forward exactly 1 week from those unsettling doorbell camera recordings. It's Thursday, June 11th. The time is 6:40 p.m. Security cameras capture Elena walking into the lobby of the Planet Fitness, located at 560 Whiteford Way. The staff knew her well. She was a regular and was completely familiar with the building. But one important detail immediately stands out. Her vehicle wasn't in the parking lot. As we've already discussed, the car was under Brannan's control. Police Chief Terrence Green later confirmed that Brannan had the vehicle that evening. That means Elena either walked to the gym or someone deliberately drove her there and dropped her off at the entrance. Then something happened that still doesn't fit any logical explanation. A professional personal trainer, a woman whose life revolved around fitness, arrived at the gym but never went anywhere near the workout area. Police Inspector Missy Silcox was very clear about that point. Elena never exercised that evening. Instead, she walked into the locker room, took a shower, and then left the building. It was an unusually mechanical sequence of actions. Ask yourself this: why would someone go all the way to a gym just to take a shower? Was she using the building as a place to temporarily get away from someone waiting outside? Or was there another reason she felt she needed to wash up immediately? To this day, investigators have not provided a definitive answer to that question. After leaving Planet Fitness, Elena headed toward the shopping area at 5412 Sunset Boulevard. That's where the large Lowe's home improvement store is located. Security cameras captured her walking directly toward the thick wooded area behind the store. And at that exact moment, the digital trail suddenly stops. What follows is a complete blind spot lasting exactly 2 hours and 37 minutes. No passing pedestrians, no dash cam footage, no street cameras. Think about that empty stretch of time for a second. 2.5 hours in a populated part of town is a very long time. Where was she during all that time? Was she walking through the tree line, trying to stay out of sight? Was she sitting in someone's vehicle in a parking lot? Was she looking for somewhere safe to hide? Police have not released any witness information from that area. And that gap is the biggest black hole in the entire investigation, because it may contain the key to understanding what really happened. Elena only reappears out of that darkness at 9:17 p.m. She's wearing the same clothes, an olive green zip-up hoodie and black athletic pants. Cameras at the Publix supermarket at 100 Old Cherokee Road capture her walking alone. And if you look at a map of Lexington, you'll understand right away that this was not just the next block over. The distance from the gym to that Publix is significant, and it would require crossing roads and moving through poorly lit areas. The footage clearly shows Elena heading east. Private investigator Henry Dukes, who later became involved in the search, pointed out that this direction made sense. It led straight toward her home. But Elena never made it to her front door that night. From that Publix to the place where she would later be found, there was still about 1.5 miles left to go. I carefully reconstructed this timeline and stripped away everything unnecessary so you can see the raw sequence clearly. After Elena was seen near the Publix parking lot shortly after 9 p.m., her trail disappears for good. That camera captured her for the last time. From there, the story moves into the work of law enforcement and the deeply confusing behavior of one specific person we need to talk about in detail. Friday morning, June 12th, arrives. Police receive the official missing person report. And right here, the detail involving the vehicle comes back into focus, because honestly, this part is hard to wrap your head around. Follow the movement of the objects. The night before, Elena arrived at the gym on foot. Police stated clearly that Brannon had the car. So logically, you would expect the vehicle to have been at their home that night. But on Friday morning, Brannon Slice goes to the Lowe's home improvement store, the same shopping area where his wife's trail went cold the night before, and finds her car there. That leaves me with one obvious question, and I'd like you to think about it too. How did a vehicle Elena never drove to the gym end up abandoned in a parking lot next to the woods? Who brought it there, and when? To this day, the publicly available case records don't answer those questions. Officers carefully processed the vehicle after it was found. Inside, everything was remarkably clean. There were no signs that anyone else had been inside, no evidence of a struggle, and nothing suggesting physical force had been used. It looked as if the vehicle had simply been left there, waiting for its owner. A large-scale search operation quickly got underway. Police drones took to the air, scanning the wooded areas section by section. In cases like this, investigators usually place their biggest hopes on the missing person's cell phone. Inspector Missy Silcox publicly stated that investigators believed Elena still had her phone with her. But the digital trail had gone completely silent. The device was powered off and wasn't producing a single network signal. To make matters even more difficult, cellular providers were slow to respond to court orders requesting phone records, leaving investigators effectively blind during the most critical first hours of the search. While search teams were losing valuable time waiting for that information, something else was unfolding online that changed how many people viewed the case. I took a close look at Brannon's online activity during those days. It turns out that late that night, before the official missing person report, and before the search operation even began, Brannon made a short Facebook post. He wrote that his wife wasn't okay. A short time later, the post disappeared. That raises an important question. Why publicly describe someone's condition before you've even begun searching for them, only to quietly delete the post afterward? Then the story grew even bigger. National media outlets picked it up. Major television networks, including ABC, NBC, Fox News, and NewsNation, began covering Elena's disappearance. Henry Dukes' investigative agency announced a substantial cash reward for information, while dozens of local volunteers spent long hours searching through dense woods under the intense June heat. And what was Brannon doing during that same time? He describes himself as a digital content creator. During the search, he published another Facebook post. This time, it was a public apology. But it wasn't an apology for not being able to find Elena, or for not participating enough in the search. Instead, he apologized for an old photo he had posted a couple of weeks earlier. People immediately began asking him in the comments, "Why aren't you talking about the search? Where are the requests for the community's help?" Those questions never received a public response. At the same time, the picture remained deeply contradictory. Private investigator Henry Dukes later told reporters that, during their face-to-face meetings, Brannon appeared genuinely devastated and sincerely wanted to help. Local law enforcement also pushed back firmly against public speculation, emphasizing that Brannon was cooperating with investigators and was not considered a suspect. But Sandra Campbell painted a very different picture during an interview with journalist Brian Enton. She recalled one evening when she and Elena ended up missing an expensive concert because Elena simply couldn't bring herself to be around her husband. According to Sandra, The fear Elena felt was that overwhelming. How can two completely different portraits of the same person exist within the same case? That's one of the questions that still hasn't left me. The investigation had reached a dead end, shifting the focus from the woods to the forensic laboratory. As we already know, the initial examination of Elena's body left investigators with almost no answers. There wasn't a single visible injury or obvious clue to explain what had happened. At that point, the outcome of the case depended entirely on microscopic tissue analysis and advanced toxicology testing. Coroner Margaret Fisher immediately made the ground rules clear. She stated that no additional information would be released until the forensic pathologist could officially determine the cause of death. While the public continued to speculate, forensic experts were quietly assembling the puzzle one piece at a time. By then, investigators had finally received the long-awaited records from the cellular providers. Crime scene specialists also conducted an inch-by-inch examination of the area near Lakeside Middle School, where Elena was eventually found. But the most important question facing the medical examiner wasn't where Elena was found. It was when she died. Investigators needed to establish one critical fact. Had her body remained in those woods since Thursday night? Or would the biological evidence show a timeline that didn't match the last surveillance footage near the Publix parking lot? As investigators remained silent, two completely different theories began competing in the public conversation. The first came from Elena's close friend, Sandra Campbell, during a live interview with NewsNation. Sandra is convinced this was a criminal case. To her, the years of isolation, Elena's lack of access to her own vehicle, and the overwhelming fear she displayed during that brunch all point in the same direction. She believes someone intentionally made sure Elena would never return home. A very different perspective came from former Federal Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Her opinion is based strictly on the available evidence. According to Coffindaffer, surveillance footage doesn't show anyone following Elena as she walked toward the wooded area. She believes it would be a serious investigative mistake to conclude that a crime occurred before the toxicology results are complete. Based on her experience, overwhelming emotional stress and a failing marriage can absolutely exist at the same time. But that alone does not automatically make a spouse responsible for a crime. So which explanation makes more sense to you? As of today, this case remains unresolved. No one has been charged with any crime. There are no officially named suspects, and Brannon Slice remains a free man. I've walked you through every documented step of this unusual case, from Elena's unsettling behavior in strangers' neighborhoods to the unexplained gaps in the surveillance timeline. But the final answer won't come from online rumors or deleted social media posts. Right now, the truth is waiting inside laboratory reports, toxicology results, and forensic analysis. As soon as the official findings are released, I'll break down every new piece of evidence. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely interested to hear what conclusion you've reached after looking at all of the facts.